2023 has been a huge year for gaming, with Tears of the Kingdom at the very top of my personal list for the end of year awards coming up very, very soon. However, the latest Legend of Zelda entry has got some real stiff competition in Baldur's Gate 3, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Final Fantasy XVI, Resident Evil 4 Remake and Armoured Core 6, and that is just to name a few titles. Today, I want to take a look at Tears of the Kingdom's case for winning Game of the Year 2023, and why it's not only Game of the Year, but it could be the Game of the Decade. Well, we knew going into 2023 it was going to be a good year for games. Over the past few years, we've seen delay after delay due to COVID and various other issues. It felt like the floodgates finally opened this year, with many top quality games releasing. Now, Tears of the Kingdom was my most anticipated game this year, and for good reason. I went on to sink over 100 hours into that game. But there is plenty of competition for the title of Game of the Year 2023, so I mentioned some of them in my intro, including Baldur's Gate 3, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Final Fantasy XVI, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Armored Core 6, Dead Space Remake, Dave the Diver, Hogwarts Legacy, Starfield, Diablo 4, Spider-Man 2, and also Star Wars Jedi Survivor. You know, all these games have a good chance of winning awards at the end of the year. So while Tears of the Kingdom is my Game of the Year, it may not be everyone else's Game of the Year, so there are plenty of other great games, but I think Game of the Year is going to come down to two games, and that's going to be The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Baldur's Gate 3. If you'd have asked me this question in May, I would have said I'm very, very confident that Tears of the Kingdom will definitely take the crown. However, now I am not so sure. Baldur's Gate 3 came out and blew everyone's expectations and has been getting glowing feedback from across the industry, from critics and also fans alike. Now, this year is going to be a really close year, and probably the closest year for a long time. Now, most years you've got a front runner, like in 2022 with Elden Ring, that pretty much swept the board. Even though God of War Ragnarok and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 were great games in their own right, they didn't really come close to Elden Ring. Well, the two main contenders this year do have a lot of similarities, while offering up a very different gaming experience. Both send you off on a huge adventure, while the mechanics are very different. So if you like D&D and deep RPG experiences, then you'll most likely favour Baldur's Gate 3. But if you like active action and adventure, then you'll probably favour Tears of the Kingdom. Baldur's Gate 3 is probably the best role-playing game ever that we've seen focused on narrative and character depth, with the developer Larian offering the players seemingly infinite choice, which can also change the direction of the main story and also the side quests. Larian Studios also allow the player to make their way through a world from a narrative point of view, selecting their own path. So Tears of the Kingdom does offer player choice too, but it is definitely from a more of an exploration and building point of view. Now, Baldur's Gate 3 arguably has the better story, but for me, the moment-to-moment gameplay in Tears of the Kingdom is unparalleled, and it's so fun through Link's abilities like Ascend, Fuse, Ultra Hand, Recall. It's really, really hard to pick between these two great games. So, here are some reasons why I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to win Game of the Year 2023. Well, first of all, I think it's better than Breath of the Wild. Arguably, it's a better game than Breath of the Wild that came out in 2017 and won Game of the Year that year, I should add. Tears of the Kingdom builds on everything that was great about Breath of the Wild, and I think it goes above and beyond. Gameplay point of view, story point of view, the building, Link's abilities, it's so good. I think objectively it is a better game than Breath of the Wild, but the question is always there, is it more important than Breath of the Wild? I think, to be honest, Breath of the Wild had a bigger impact on the gaming industry, whereas objectively I think Tears of the Kingdom is actually a better game. Well, next reason, I want to talk about the depths. So much was made of the Sky Islands in the build-up to the recent Tears of the Kingdom, but the big surprise on launch day was the depths. This was a huge secret underground area, which is just as big as Hyrule, and it's my favourite gaming moment in 2023. That first time you go down into the depths, I was absolutely stunned, and it was absolutely magic. Well, next up we've got Ultra Hand. So Link has many abilities, including Recall, Fuse, Ascend, but I think Ultra Hand wins the prize for the most outstanding ability. The fact that you can stick together items found around the world and create vehicles and structures, even battle mechs, if you have the know-how. Now, Ultra Hand on its own is reason enough to give Tears of the Kingdom Game of the Year 2023. Well, next up we've got skydiving. So while Breath of the Wild was all about climbing, Tears of the Kingdom focuses on skydiving and that sense of freedom that you get jumping off a sky island or being shot up into the sky by one of the Skyview towers. It is absolutely second to none. Well, next up, this might be a controversial one, but I'm going to talk about that ending. I know there are plenty of story holes in Tears of the Kingdom, but that ending with Ganondorf and Princess Zelda has to go down as one of the most epic battles that we've had in a Legend of Zelda game. Well, there's a few reasons why I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to win Game of the Year 2023, but a couple of weeks ago I put out a call on YouTube to get your input and your comments about Game of the Year 2023. I really wanted to see what you think, so let's dive into your comments. First of all, we've got Michael5091, and Michael says about Tears of the Kingdom, great game, although I did get a bit leggy with it towards the end. In my opinion, too much evolution of Breath of the Wild rather than revolution. It did feel like an expansion in the end, but that being said, I still couldn't score less than a 9.9 out of 10. It's not going to be Game of the Year for me though. That honour should go to Baldur's Gate 3. Never played a CRPG before, but picked it up for PS5 a few weeks back. I haven't put it down, it's utterly incredible. Well, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate your comments. I definitely get your point about the evolution rather than the revolution. And good to hear that you picked up Baldur's Gate 3 on the PS5. I've got it on PC myself, but it's really interesting that you play it on a console. I heard they did a really good job with the mechanics on the controller. Well, next up, we got Hero Shade 06. So as much as I love Tears of the Kingdom, it's got some stiff competition this year. After I finished the game, I thought for sure it had GOTY in the bag, but now I'm not so sure. Gameplay-wise, Tears of the Kingdom is the best that I've ever played, but for me personally, I play single-player games for the story first, and I like Starfield's main story more. Plus, we got games like Spider-Man 2 coming out in just a few days. Well, thank you, Hero Shade 06, really appreciate your comment, and that was just before Spider-Man 2 came out. Spider-Man 2 is obviously out now, and that is really good. If you haven't played that game, I definitely would recommend it. But I definitely appreciate your point of view there, Hero Shade. Single-player games for the story first, and Starfield story, that's very interesting indeed. I thought they leveled up the story in Tears of the Kingdom, but I can see being able to piece the story together bit by bit by going around in that open world isn't quite as coherent as a single-player game where you get it in a linear fashion. So I definitely see where you're coming from. Well, next up, we got a comment from Titania. And Titania says, it's the biggest scope of any video game with so many ways and places to immerse yourself, and the world is yours to play with, and navigating the terrain always feels like a creative challenge to see what cool vehicles you can build to get around with, and when you're really proud of your build, you can favourite it. It's probably the longest developed game ever made, with such a large skilled team pouring their souls and their love into it. Well, it looks like we've got a big fan there for Tears of the Kingdom. But next up, we've got Chris Baker, 5568. Chris Baker says, no game can come close to what they made with Tears of the Kingdom. The open world, the feel, the physics, the amount of gameplay even without DLCs, the endless possibilities. So it'll probably do one better and win Game of the Decade if games like Grand Theft Auto 6 doesn't compare. Even then, it's like Breath of the Wild, a masterpiece, except it's even better than Breath of the Wild. Well, thank you, Chris Baker. Really appreciate your comment there. And finally, we've got Malikat, and Malikat says, hate to break it to you, but Baldur's Gate has this year in the bag. A lot of great games, though, this year. Personally, I wanted Armoured Core 6 to win, but dreams are left best in sleep. I do feel the expansion of the companions as well as the functionality of these Zonai devices are a nice touch. But the real star of Tears of the Kingdom is Ganondorf's return. However, I'm dissatisfied with the brief cameo of Twin Rover, and it really could have become something. but modders are going to figure that out. Well, thank you, Malikat. Really appreciate your comments there. And it looks like we've got clear fans of Tears of the Kingdom, but also there's a lot of love out there for Baldur's Gate 3. Also, a couple of people mentioned another couple of games there like Starfield and Spider-Man 2. And to be honest, I reckon Super Mario Bros. Wonder has a good shout for Game of the Year as well. I can't believe we are in another year like 2017 when we had a mainline Zelda game and a Mario game released in the same year with Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. Fast forward to 2023, we've got Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder. We've been absolutely spoilt this year, so we've got to send our love to Nintendo. Well, Game of the Year is going to happen probably in December 2023. We've got the Game Awards and also loads of video game outlets, podcasts, magazines, YouTube channels. They're going to be doing their personal games of the year. And I reckon it's going to be between Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3. And it's going to be really interesting to see who is going to get the most Game of the Year 2023 nominations and then, of course, take the crown. But that is not it. We've still got a little bit of time to speculate. So which game do you think is going to win Game of the Year 2023? Let me know what games you've been playing alongside Tears of the Kingdom, of course. I would really, really love to hear what you think. Well, that is it today for this video to try and answer the question, will Zelda Tears of the Kingdom win Game of the Year 2023? And as always, thank you so much for watching or for listening. Well, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you real soon.